Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty, a counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 3 members, 6 questions, and 3 answers for each question. Each squad member generates a question we all have to answer. Some of them are just great depth, thoughtful questions, and some of them are just silly. So let's see who we've got with us tonight.
Hi, everyone. Elliot Ingersoll, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
Hi, I'm Steph Martyr, doctoral candidate at Kent State University and practicing clinical counselor.
Okay, so we've got a small group, but lots of questions, and I think we'll get through them. Generally, when we do this kind of arrangement, questions go a little bit faster. And I'm surprised how the show moves. So we're going to start with Elliot, and Elliot has the first question.
All right. What are some of your favorite guerrilla bureaucracy moves to disrupt meetings?
I don't have any. I just haven't had the opportunity to hone any of those moves over the years to this point. I can't wait to hear what the both of you can say to this. Because I don't think I've actually actively tried to disrupt meetings before. And I just think that's the point in my career where I'm up to. So I still have a lot more to work through so I can get to that point where I want to be a disruptor. So yeah.
All right, I'll take this one on. I don't go to, I don't pay attention in a lot of meetings. So it's sort of, if I know I'm locked into a situation where I have to sit around in a meeting for a period of time, I'm generally multitasking and listening to what's going on. To me, it's like background radio station. And occasionally I have to talk to the radio, but generally I can sit there and try and move things around and get things done. That sometimes it's class prep because the meetings occur during the day and I teach during the night. It's like I want to find this document or I had this idea and I'll go on a wild search trying to find it for class prep. But I do want to tell you, I use this one trick and I think you can use it too because it's a perfectly socially acceptable kind of trick. And I've done this at conferences where you're in a large luncheon and they're about to bring up the guest speaker and you're done eating and you really don't want to sit through the guest speaker. And this was particularly true for me when the guest speaker was some association or some cause that wanted to show me all the things that they do. And I'm not talking about altruistic things. That's fine and dandy. I'll write a check. But sometimes I'm talking about national professional associations that are looking for us to donate money. What you do is you look down at your table really quick, on the table. You pick up your phone. You put your phone to your ear, you stand up, and you mime or mimic the fact that you're responding to a phone call without making any noise, of course. Just, okay, and then you turn and you walk out of the room, never to return to the luncheon. It's like, if people see you, they think you're taking an emergency call and you're being polite by leaving the room. So I pulled that trick a couple of times to get out of those kind of arduous, long presentations at lunch when all I want is a break.
That's a good one. Yeah, I have a few. One of my favorites is just a simple process statement. Nice kind of counseling process statement, especially when people aren't making sense or when they're going on too long. And I used to I think I have more equanimity now, but less compassion for someone who's going to suck all the air out of the room. And start timing people while they're talking. And I'll be like, well, we've only got an hour to go, and you've been talking 7 minutes, and there's 40 other people in here. So I'm kind of wondering what everyone else has to say. That's a good one. Um, Also, calling bullshit. We had a president who I can't fathom how he got elected into that job. He had two ideas, both were horrible. And he wanted us to be, he said, an anchor institution and a beacon institution. Now, this is really cheap, really flimsy higher ed jargon. And I said, let me get this straight. Beacons warn people away. So you want us to warn people away from CSU. And anchors stop things from moving. So you want us to stop movement. Is this what we're aiming for? Doesn't sound quite right to me. Then sometimes if I'm in like a horseshoe or a circle, if someone's really over the top, I'll just resort to physical comedy and pull my head into my shirt like that. That usually gets a message across, although it's not always taken positively. But those are some of my favorites.
I've always wanted to use that Steve Martin line from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles that he does on John Candy and says, when you're telling a story, it's nice if you have a point. All right. Stephanie, you're next.
Okay. Well, what do you think makes someone decide to volunteer to be a participant in someone's research?
Oh boy, I got this one first. Um, a personal relationship to the topic. So when you send something out to a listserv and there are 7,000 people, you're really only speaking to people who have a personal relationship to the topic. So if you're doing something on AI, for example, as part of your research, the only people that are going to be put the extra step in to take their time from their already horrendously busy schedules. It was a very convenient thing to do. It was part of our job 20 years ago. But now it's just gotten overwhelming. But the only people that'll step in are those folks that feel like they know something about this topic, they're invested in it, and they really want to make sure their voice is heard, which kind of skews your research then, doesn't it? And then the other time that I've been involved in something like this, it's because a person has sent it to a program and the question has come to me and I know the chair in the program that they're coming from. And it's sort of one of these like obligatory, I've got to do something with this, or the next time I run into this chair at a conference, I'm going to feel like I haven't held up my part of the bargain with it. So those are the two places where I might be involved in responding. And I think that's generally true for people. Either it's a personal quest to be able to share your ideas because you think your ideas are important, or it's guilt. It's the thing that basically drives everything in the world. Elliot.
Wow. So I am right there with you, Marty, because my first thing was I look at it, and if it's really interesting to me, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like something I want to, put some energy into. And then if it's someone I'm trying to support, whether that's a friend or a student or a colleague, and I try to do the research and get the research out to students. Those are my top two reasons, absolutely. And as you know, there's so many things that, at least until recently, would come through things like SesNet, and it's like, out of so many, you really hope they have people who are going to help them out. But I can't do all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I I always have to think about that when I get involved in answering those kinds of surveys. And then sometimes I get into them and this will only take 10 minutes of your time. And 20 minutes later, I know there is no end to this and I am gone. So I become incomplete data. So, Steph, it's on you.
Well, thank you for those answers. And it's funny because I put down my answers, and the very first bullet I have is, if they find the research interesting, dash, they have a personal interest to the topic. Okay.
Mm.
So that made a lot of sense to me. I also was thinking maybe a short amount of time being requested, even though we know people lie, just as Marty was saying, um, about like expected
I
amounts of
don't know if
time.
they lie. I think they just underestimate it because they're so familiar with their protocol that it's like, oh yeah, they can do this in a minute. No, people can't. Um,
Yeah,
so
but then you sign up for what you think is a certain amount of time, and then
yeah.
it turns out to be like more.
Mhm.
Um, which, if you were kind of given notice that maybe it was going to take an actual 20 minutes to half an hour to complete, then then you wouldn't be surprised when it's taking that long if you decide to participate. But it can be frustrating when you're like, mm-mm. um I didn't mean lie and like people are being deceptive on purpose. I meant it with air quotes. But um the last thing I thought was maybe money, um incentive in some sort of way too, but that just might be committed, more like compounding benefits. So like, because someone is still has to be interested in it first, right? That's what we kind of all came to. But maybe if there's a little bit more financial incentive and it's not supposed to take a long time, maybe that would draw people in.
Yeah, I look at the financial incentive, or I have 300 people and we're going to choose a Amazon card for, 3 Amazon cards from the 300 people. It's not an incentive for me. And then I look at my time and go, if I'm going to spend half hour to 45 minutes filling this thing out, what is that worth? What is that worth my time? And so it's never been that kind of, that money has never been an incentive for these
Mhm.
kinds of things for me. But and then
Yeah, I mean,
sometimes I get in the middle of this research and it's just so poorly designed, or they're asking so many questions. It's like, and they're all Likert scales, and it's like, this makes no rational sense. Why don't you just ask me what I think? So, Elliot, did I cut you off?
no, no. I was just going to say fiscal incentives. My problems at this stage in life are all five-figure problems. There's not likely to be a research. Yeah, I
All right, so I've got the first of my questions for tonight, and it is: what do you or would you look for in a master's level counseling student candidate? Knowing what you know about what practicing counselors could or should do.
it's fun. We in my theory class we just covered Rogers, and I love a lot of Rogers' ideas about what makes a person a good counselor. I'd look for someone kind of artsy. I think that
Mm,
that can be helpful. Someone who's very playful, someone who can let their imagination rip, someone who finds human beings interesting and, reads books or goes to plays or goes to films because they're interested in human beings. I think those are the main things for me, especially that sense of playfulness and allowing their imagination to go out and, create something in the session. I think that's all good. I know it has to be tempered, but that's what I'd look for.
Steph?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question for me too, because I guess things that I would also be looking for, because I think Elliot had some great qualities there, is one is, can they be silent? Can they be quiet? Um, and sit in that a little bit more. And I'd also just like, besides their counseling specific skills, I'm interested to hear how they talk about their own life and the language that they use, and just that their thinking, behind their own life and how they approach things in general. Not that I think they would necessarily translate that, nor should they translate that to clients, but it would give me a sense of maybe maturity and understanding about people, just how they decide to approach things in their own life.
As I mentioned, I think pre-show to you guys that we're getting ready to review candidates for our spring semester, and as part of that, this question comes to me, and it's not an easy thing for me to evaluate. So my responses to the question are kind of maturity and life experiences. I'm sorry, you just have to, and I don't by life experiences I don't mean you had personal traumatic background or upbringing. You get some students who come in driven because of their own experience, and then I wonder about, but they're not here for their own experience, they're here for the client's experience, and how does that translate, and have they done their own work around it? But sort of a sense of maturity and patience, and unfortunately I don't think a lot of our students have that. Students in general, I'm not necessarily speaking to the institution I'm at, but they haven't developed that yet. It's just not the front brain, frontal cortex hasn't finished doing its job. Like Elliot, I put on the list liberal arts knowledge, the idea that they know more about the world than their excitement about EMDR or CBT or some other technique that they either had used on them or they read about and they really want to use on other people. And then I don't know how to measure. I think, yeah, there are probably measures for it. But I think it's a real skill that practicing counselors have that are good, and that's the ability to manage uncertainty. Because life's not going to, and your counseling practice is not going to come out like a movie. You're lucky if it gets anything close to that, but often your clients present you with all sorts of uncertainties that you have no ability to manage or control because it's out of your hands. So those are my answers around that. And unfortunately, I don't think we have a lot of people. I wish we had more people coming to the field that had that background. So yeah, I'll stop there before I get in any more trouble. Elliot, you've got your second round question.
Well, I'm just looking at these and I realize we did cover this second round question. So I have one I can chuck in as a surprise question.
Can
Is
I
that
can
okay?
I ask? I am sorry to interrupt. Was there not another Marty question right after? Did you have back-to-back questions?
No, I had them both in there and then
Okay.
took them out from the show notes. So
Okay.
I was like,
I
that was kind of a
apologize.
holding space for the question that I eventually came up with as my second question.
Oh, okay. Oh, see it. Okay. My bad. Sorry.
So, what was some of the best or better guidance you got at any point in your life about being a sexual being?
Okay, I'm glad Stephanie gets this one first.
Wait, that's not. Oh, that's because you changed it. Okay. Oh, what? What about being a sexual being?
Well, did you receive any good guidance about that
Oh,
experience in your life? Because not everyone has, but if you did,
no.
was
I
there any
mean,
helpful?
okay. Not not as specifically. I had to glean things, I think more so from I had to create my own guidance and take things I suppose from pop culture, from maybe other classes, because I had some teachers in college that would, maybe there was guidance there in some way, but not in a personal way, more in a general way. Um, and then life, I let life guide me. So I'm glad I didn't have all day to think about that. Okay.
I'll step in. I got no good guidance. With my age, they had just started introducing sex ed into the school system, and they were introducing it into, this is a story, so sit back. They were introducing it into the third grade, and my third grade teacher terrified everybody. She was kind of new. She had been a long-standing teacher, but she was new to our school, and her name was Miss Sternson. And she was responsible for doing this section on sex ed. And it was only a couple of times that the boys had to go to another room while the girls did something, and the girls had to go to another room. Well, Joe Baca had a little tape recorder, and he put it in his desk and had it run while the girls were doing their lecture, so we could all snoop in on that. Miss Sternson was a fire plug shaped woman who had a really loud, gravelly voice. In fact, she was so loud in class, other teachers would come from down the hall to tell her she needs to be quiet. They can hear her all the way down the hall. And so she had a question box, and where we could ask any question we wanted. And it led up to, there were some, basic questions that people had, but this was kind of the last day. The other thing that I remember from the class was she sent us all out. We had to get pure white, notebooks that with the little clip binders in them, the things that you put holes through, punched holes through, and then put your papers in it. But they had to be pure white. They couldn't be any other color because, we had to be pure when we talked about this stuff.
A virgin binder.
Yeah, virgin binder. And so everybody stuffed the mailbox. Everybody stopped the question box was, how does the sperm get to the egg? Which was the part of the, and I hope I'm not ruining it for people who are listening. It was part of the, it was part of the question they never explained in third grade health. And she was getting so many questions that I think the word got around, and other people kind of stuffed the question box with this question, and they really wanted to see how she'd handle it. Maybe they knew, maybe I didn't, for sure. She went around, and we're in a third floor room. She went around and pulled all the shades down like somebody was going to be watching her explain how the sperm got to the egg. And that was my introduction to sexuality and sexuality training. So it didn't get much better after that.
Was that parochial or public school, Marty?
Oh, this is public school. This wasn't parochial. She wasn't a nun. Okay.
These are good answers. Thanks for indulging me. In the 60s, the counterculture talked about it, but no one in my family did. And I wouldn't say they were sex negative. Some people would say by being avoidant, they were sex negative, but they were just, they didn't know how to talk about it. And we didn't get a sex ed module till like 8th grade. And by that time, we've already learned all the things, the urban legends that are wrong, or, and so it was, and it was given in such technical language. I zoned out. I was drawing cartoons. I don't really recall much. But I finally had a date in secondary school for a homecoming dance. And my mom said she was kind of nervous. And she's like, look, I'm just going to tell you this once. It's what your Aunt Dorothy told me. It was my mom's older sister. She goes, clap is bad, sif is worse. Use your hands for safety first. That was it. That was the extent of my sex ed. I said, thanks, Ma, and I was off.
Well, go ahead. Do you have anything to add to that, Stephanie, or you've already felt like you stepped in it enough already?
I'll move on.
All
What is a
right,
book?
then you,
Sorry.
yeah, I don't know where my white notebook is. I'm sure my mother kept everything. And so somewhere in her house is stored my white booklet. Um, I don't know. Like Elliot, I learned most of the stuff wrong from urban legends. So
Well, I was going to say Judy Blume. Actually, it occurred to me.
Oh,
Judy Blume probably had, you know, some stuff in there where you were like, "Oh, okay." But also the way they explained things was also wrong just because it just wasn't as modern by the time we got there. But anyway,
off show,
um
I'll
I
tell you.
gotta
Off
say
show,
this.
yeah.
One of my most relieving moments. I had asked my son something like I said, if you ever want to talk about sexual stuff, let me know. And he just looks at me with this deep voice of his and he goes, "Nah, I'm good." That was it. I'm like,
Yeah, that
excellent.
is exactly what my son said to me. Because Aileen is like, it's your turn. I did Hannah. Now you've got to go talk to Will about this. I'm not going to get off the hook for this at all. And so I went to Will and I said, Will, I'm your dad, and you're going to get involved in relationships, and well, is there anything that I can tell you about that will be helpful? You can feel free to ask. No, I'm good. It was a more uncomfortable conversation for him, I think, than it was for me. So, Stephanie, get us out of here. Get us a new question.
I'm trying. What is a book or movie that you think has great therapeutic value for students or clients?
Oh man, I have a hard time going, yeah, that's the movie. Because the things that I remember, and I don't do books. I mean, there are tons of books that I've read that are academic books, but not necessarily something that I would say this is what a client needs to read, because I feel like I'm endorsing pop psychology when I do that. So I go to the movie stuff, and the problem with the movies is there isn't, and I've only got halfway through my list of movies before we got into the show, so I can't tell you if there's ones that are going to come up after K that didn't pop into my head that I should have mentioned. But the thing with a movie teaches me one lesson, and it's a lesson that changes, well, obviously with each movie. And it's not a movie that there aren't movies that encompass all the lessons that I want clients to learn, or that I've learned from that movie. So you might come up with something. Both of you might surprise me. So these are the ones that hit my list. Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman. It's a James L. Brooks movie where the issue is he kind of screwed up as a dad. His son comes back after a failed academic career and wants to help out a little bit. Brings Paul Newman's grandson with him, who he never had a relationship with. Newman never had a relationship with his son, never had a relationship with his grandson. And there's a point in the movie where he does something that scares the kid. And Paul Newman has to go into the kid's bedroom while his son is kind of looking through the door, and does this gesture that is just so kind of insightful and connecting with the grandson. And he goes out of the room, and the son says, like, where did that come from? Where was that person when I was growing up? And Newman looks back at him and says, well, you got to start sometime. And for me, that message is we have to start sometime. And the whole movie is a lot about aging in a lot of ways. It's really, really quite good. The other movie for me is Midnight in Paris, a Woody Allen film. The story there, or the message there for me is people have a tendency to look at the past and romanticize it, even parts of times where you haven't lived. So, you think the 60s was cool and how great it was. Well, there are parts of the 60s that really stunk. And so the idea is we kind of look back at the past with, in some cases, with some reverence. And if you go back and live that experience, it really wasn't that good. So the idea of taking into consideration reflections in your life and how meaningful they are. Other movies that made the list, and I'll pass on at this point: Donnie Darko and Everything Everywhere All at Once. So it's hard for, like I said, it's hard for me to find one movie that kind of I would just give to everybody because that's the film that gives the message. Good movies, and there are lots that didn't. I'm going through my films like, no, that's just an action film. There's not a message there for me, or at least that I'd want to pass on to somebody. So, a few of them stand out, like the ones I've mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. Any of Richard Russo's books or the films they've been turned into. Empire Falls was another one that I absolutely adored. And I think he gets to the heart of what people struggle with. And it's just often the everyday, day to day, the small stuff that adds up over the years. And I really appreciate how he does that. I really liked Ordinary People, and I saw it as a depressed 20 something, but I could resonate. I thought Mary Tyler Moore, especially, she was brilliant in that film. And toward the end, her husband, they're going to split up soon. But, he says, if everything had gone all right, if everything had just gone on okay, you'd have been all right. But you couldn't handle when things didn't go okay. I thought that was quite well done. I also recall a book, I believe I read it in 8th or ninth grade. I think it was John Knowles. I think it was called A Separate Peace. And this really marked me because there's this kind of, it's a bit overdone scene. There's a fellow who's jealous of this other guy who's a quite good athlete, good looking. And they're on a tree. They climbed a tree together. They're on a tree branch. And he got the impulsive thought, if I just jiggled the branch, this other guy, I think it was Phineas was his name, will fall off. And he just impulsively jiggles the branch. The kid falls off, breaks his leg, and ends up dying from a broken leg. Not quite sure how that happened either. But it was like Ethan Frome when they try to commit suicide on a sled. I'm like, okay, first of all, y'all must have had faster sleds than we have. But I remember thinking I had a lot of envious, jealous thoughts at that age, and kind of getting permission that, yeah, people do think these thoughts, and sometimes they do these things and they do them without thinking. And that struck me to the point where, 50 years later, I still remember that. I never reread the book, but I remember that, and it had an impact on me. And so I would recommend it to other young people, I think. And then I can recommend a lot of films for a lot of specific cases, people who have a lot of ADHD stuff, any kind of time travel. 12 Monkeys is my favorite time travel film, but feeling like you're out of step with how things unfold for other people. And, it's more of a metaphor, but I've worked that with folks as well. I like this question. It really got me thinking. But yeah, definitely the novels of Richard Russo and those films I mentioned in the other book.
I got to throw in another one, Network. And the reason Network for me is because when you were talking about the kinds of things that people struggle with, and you were talking about Ordinary People, I thought of Network, and there's one scene in there where William Holden is talking to his wife. Now, his wife is played by Beatrice Straight. Beatrice Straight won an Academy Award as Best Supporting Actress for the 3 minutes that she appeared on film through the whole thing. And it's that monologue that she has with William Holden talking about what marriage is about that's like, whoa. And so, again, that's a single message from that. There's lots of messages in that film. If you haven't seen it, you need to see Network. Sidney Lumet, Petty Chevieski's writing. It's just remarkable. And it's so relevant today with what's going on with media and what's going on with society. But that one scene, she got an Academy Award for 3 minutes of this piece where he's ready to walk out and she's ready to, she talks to him about what marriage is about. So I'm sorry,
that's
Steph.
really interesting, Marty, because I rewatched that recently, and I agree with you 100%. so prescient. But when it came out in theater, I went to see it with my friends. I walked out. I'm like, what the heck is this? I'm sorry, I'm not getting this at all. And yeah, just
Yep.
goes to show you that we can all mature. I
Yeah.
didn't get it. I didn't get it at all the first time.
Okay, Stephanie, your question, your answer.
Ah, okay. So I do agree that when it comes, well, no, wait. First, I want to ask you, Marty, what was the message that you give with Donnie Darko?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's
Mhm.
just such a captivating film
Yeah.
about I don't know, there's a spiritualism aspect to it. There's a psychopathology aspect to it. There's just a lot in that
All
movie.
around me are familiar faces, worn out faces,
Oh, we got
worn out
Elliot singing again. Time
pieces.
to cut him
It's
off.
okay. It's Tears for Fears. It's okay. No, but I just think sparkle motion. Okay, nonetheless.
No, no, notorious. Yep. I love that.
Uh, so when it does come to this, I do agree when it with movies that I think movies I get more inspired by the client and what the client's going through, and then what I know of the client, and what movie might resonate a certain point with them. So when you're talking about it in a specific way, um, you know, there are times where if somebody's kind of having a hard time facing themselves and they're younger, sometimes if they're a little older, but I like using the never ending story sometimes. And also just kind of accepting all parts of yourself. I'll tell you, everybody, if you have not jumped on the bandwagon yet, K-pop Demon Hunters is amazing in lots of ways. Um, but I mean, I think that there are ways to communicate these ideas, especially maybe to younger clients, um, in and it's done in ways that maybe if you're older and you haven't given it a chance, you might just dismiss right away. Also, a lot of horror movies. I think horror movies are basically either about substance use or grief, in some way. For the most part, I think it's all just metaphors for all of that stuff that people have to work through. I mean, it's not like rocket science, but anyway. There's a book called The Midnight Library by Matt
Oh,
Haig,
yeah.
and I think that is a book that I like to use a lot with clients, because oftentimes clients come in and are like, if this one thing hadn't happened, or if this was just going okay, and life would just go on, or if I had gotten that other opportunity, then everything would be okay now. And no, you just get a whole new set of problems, or a whole new set of circumstances, and you don't know what led up to, there's just, I think that without saying too much more about it, but I think the Midnight Library addresses some of those thoughts. And it's also fiction, which is can be fun for clients. They don't want to read necessarily academic material or research papers. So I do enjoy suggesting that when it's appropriate.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I forgot all about that book till you mentioned it, and I just thought it was delightful, and I've recommended it to a lot of people.
When I was thinking of books, I thought what first thing that popped into my head was Shel Silverstein. And I don't know why, but I thought you can't not read Shel Silverstein. You can't not read. You can't read Shel Silverstein and not have your whimsy turned on, you know, especially if you do it in Uncle Shelby's voice. But so yeah, that was the book that first came to mind was sitting down and having people read Where the Sidewalk Ends, and then they wouldn't come back for a second session. Speaking of movies, I have put together the first set of show notes for a new podcast video cast called Fade to Chat Golden Age Cinema. And I'm doing it with Cindy, a friend of mine who is interested in movies and was the first one to raise their hand when I said I wanted to do it. Where she has chosen the first movie, which is Arsenic and Old Lace.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to be looking, Golden Age is from like the 30s to the mid 60s, basically the studio system. And if you look at a lot of uh, podcasts and videocasts about movies, what you're looking at is from the 80s on. Basically, that's the movies folks are 70s on. That's what people are talking about in those. And we just really like Golden Age films. And I think the plan is to have anybody who wants to join in as a guest for the week, bring the movie, and we'll set it up and put it together. And I think I've tapped Stephanie for one or two of them, and some other folks. So we're excited about having guests and picking fun movies. I haven't even gotten my list in there yet, but okay. So look for that in the coming weeks. Like I said, the show notes for the first episode are out. I sent them to Cindy today, and I think we're gonna work on that and maybe get it out in the next couple of weeks.
Let me
My
put a plug
question.
in right now for the Petrified Forest.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to get movies that are well sourced in terms of information and even scripts. And because sometimes you want to go back to the script. And some of these movies we found and know that they have real stories behind it. Like Arsenic and Old Lace, people remember Cary Grant in that movie. He hated doing that movie. He thought he was just too over the top, and he doesn't look back. I don't know if he looks back at the making of the movie. Finally, he doesn't look back at his acting in that film. But that's what the film is known for. It's kind of he goes over the top with his nuttiness in the film. So those kind of things we're gonna talk about as we find those things out with films. Let me jump to my final question for the evening. Foods you have stopped buying because the cost is now just insulting.
Well, any kind of bread, and it's partially because of the cost, but I bake really good bread, and I'm just like, I can do this at home for a fraction of the cost. It tastes better to me, and yeah, I'm not gonna pay a lot. Even like a bag of potato chips,
Yeah.
yeah, not seeing it anymore, and I don't need them anyway, you know. So
Oh,
yeah,
I
it's
I
kind of
need
helping
them.
me. I like them, but yeah, it's too much. Too much. And we got a friend who has a farm with dozens of chickens, and he gifts us 18 eggs a week, which is just,
Wow.
Hmm.
oh, wow, right? And they taste better too, you know? So, yeah,
Mhm.
we're very lucky. And we have a big garden plot up at the Kent Community Garden. So, yeah, we try to grow what we really, really, really like and bake what we don't want to pay for.
Yeah. Or grow stuff that you can get baked
Oh, that
with
too. Or get
uh,
baked while you grow stuff. That's fun too.
stuff.
Or gross stuff to get baked. uh, um, well, I think there's a rotation in our house more so than like stop buying, but I more than anything, it's more like I get all the generic brands now,
Mm.
much more often of like cheese and milk and things like that. So, because I'm like, why am I paying $2 more for lactate milk? Sorry, lactate milk, but if you want to, you know, I can be bought in milk. Um, but $2 a carton versus a giant eagle lactose free milk. I mean, at a certain point, I don't even drink it just for the house. So, um, you know, sorry, Nora. And if you complain about it, it's just this is what the store had. But really, it's like getting the. It's funny. It's just like how easily I could just shift that frame of reference all of a sudden, and it's just like generic's fine. Maybe one or two items you're not going to want to do that, but just kind of going generic.
You know, you mentioned that. It reminded me of a story. My buddy and I were vacationing in Myrtle Beach, and we met these two guys. They were characters, good musicians. from a very small Appalachian town. This was their first time out forever. And they went to a store and they were saying they got these things. It's like it doesn't have a brand. It just says beer or it just says cereal or it just says. And my friend says to him, "Oh, well, those are generic products, Joe." And he goes, "Huh, funny they don't put the name on it."
All right, mine is popcorn. I am going through some heart and weight issues, and the doctor says, you need to not eat stuff late at night because that'll help you with your diet, or getting your sugar under control and things like that.
What? Your doctor must know mine. That's the first thing they say. And I'm like, I get hungry late at night.
Yeah, so do I. I do most of my stuff late at night, and I get to watch entertainment. So, anyways, the doctor said you can't have snacks. The only thing you can have is popcorn. I'm like, okay, I'll do popcorn. Well, that was maybe a month or two ago when I saw him, and I started getting popcorn in the store. And frankly, most of the popcorn is tasteless. There's just not a lot of excitement about it. And now you're looking at bags of, like, they had like Cheetos covered popcorn. I mean, I don't think that was the popcorn he was talking about, but there's the rest of it is like Himalayan salt and, really light flavored. And I just had problems with it. And then, I'd go in there and I'd shop competitively for the price. And then one week, all of the prices went up to like $6 a bag. And I'm like, no. And the generic that they had that the store made, they stopped stocking on the shelf. Because I could still get that for $2.50, $3 and get a nice big bag of it, but not anymore. So popcorn is one of those. Ironically, I was in Chicago this weekend, and if you're a Chicagoan, you've had Garrett's popcorn. And Garrett's popcorn has a thing called the Garrett's mix, which is the cheesiest cheese corn mixed with caramel corn. So you have both of those flavors together. And Elliot's kind of it's not his, you don't know what it's like till you tried it.
No, it's good. It's good.
It's really good.
Peer
And,
pressure.
in Chicago, when you go there and you pass through O'Hare Airport, there's Garrett's there. And I checked my flight and I checked what terminal I was going out. And then I went on the internet or on my phone and said, where is Garrett's located in the airport? And all they said was Terminal 1. And I was flying out of Terminal 3. So I got online and I ordered some to have delivered to my house here, which will drive Aileen nuts. And as I'm sitting with my back, two women come and sit down next to me with two Garrett's bags. And I'm like, is Garrett's around here somewhere close? And she said, yeah, turn around. It's right. So there was one on Terminal 3 apparently. And so then it was the dilemma. Do I pass up the opportunity to get the popcorn now? Or do I wait a couple? So I bought some popcorn when I was in Chicago, and it's sitting downstairs waiting for me. Garrett mix. Okay, so that's everything except the final shot question. The final shot question is personal room temperature preferences.
Oh, I'm not picky at all. Anything between 73 and 85, perfect.
Oh, that's too hot.
Yeah.
Like 68. And really it's almost more important that like air is moving. So it could be 70 or 71 if maybe the AC is currently going, or if there's fans moving. That helps. I need that.
Yeah, I've got to say, this is a constant argument. I'm a big guy that is exothermic. I generate heat. And I like to have it cool. And like I have a fan going behind me right now, try to keep it low so it doesn't interrupt the sound. I'm on the third floor, third level of my house, and so air conditioning doesn't get up here as much as I'd like. So Aileen and I are constantly battling the temperature of the thermostat, and she will let it go warm, and then I'll be sitting, why is it so warm in here? And then I'll look at it, and she shut it off. And then I'll turn it on, and then she'll go to bed, and then I'll turn it on so it's nice and cool, and then turn it off before I go to bed. So we have this battle of the temperature preferences. She likes it warm, and I like it rather cool, as cool as I can make it. So for our listeners, you might have your own temperature preferences. You might have your own battles going on with people that you love about where the thermostat should be set. But that's it for tonight's Circular Firing Squad. Let's thank the firing squad, Elliot and Stephanie, for joining us tonight. This is show number 94, and we will be moving up to 100, which will be kind of a fun celebration. Look for some of these characters on their podcasts on thepodtalk.net. Check out other podcasts at the website, podtalk.net. Our theme song is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shed. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.